There are 5 organizations on this planet that know things your government does not tell you, things your media cannot print, things that have already decided outcomes you think are still in the future. You're about to work for all 5 of them, not as a hero, not as a villain, as something more dangerous than either, as a professional, as someone who is very, very good at existing in the space between what is known and what is allowed to be known. This is not a story about spies. This is a story about what happens to a person who spends a career inside the most powerful intelligence architecture ever built, level by level, agency by agency, until the architecture is no longer something you work inside. It is something you carry. Level 1. The farm. You are 26 years old and you have just driven past a checkpoint in rural Virginia on a road that does not appear on any commercial map. The sign at the entrance said Armed Forces Experimental Training Activity. That is not what this place is. This is Camp Peary. The intelligence community calls it the farm. The Central Intelligence Agency has trained its clandestine officers here since the 1950s, and the United States government has never officially confirmed it exists. You are now a trainee in the Directorate of Operations. The CIA was created by the National Security Act of 1947. On paper, it is an intelligence collection and analysis organization reporting to the president. In practice, the Directorate of Operations, the part you just joined, runs human intelligence networks across every continent on Earth. HUMINT, human sources, real people in real places feeding real information at real personal risk. Your job is to find those people, develop them, recruit them, and run them without getting any of them killed. Your instructor tells you something in the first week that you will not fully understand for years. He says the best intelligence officers are not the smartest people in the room. They are the most patient. You spend months learning how to build a cover identity so complete that it holds under direct interrogation. You learn surveillance and counter-surveillance. You learn how to meet a source in a city where you are being watched and leave no evidence that the meeting happened. You learn that the most important skill in this profession is the ability to make a person trust you with something they would die to protect. At the end of the farm, they give you a diplomatic passport with a name that is not yours. You fly to your first posting. A city in Europe, a desk in an embassy, a list of targets, and a mandate that reads assess, develop, recruit. You do not feel like a spy. You feel like a very well-trained and extremely alone professional sitting in a foreign city trying to convince people to commit treason against their own governments. 90% of them say no. The ones who say yes change everything. The most dangerous thing the CIA ever gave you was not a weapon or a clearance. It was the knowledge that almost anyone can be turned if you find the right pressure point at the right moment in their life. Level 2. The signal. 3 years later, you are in a building in Fort Meade, Maryland that officially does not exist on the organizational chart of any government agency. The employees who work here call their employer no such agency. The rest of the world calls it the National Security Agency. The NSA was created by a classified presidential directive in 1952, not by an act of Congress, not by public legislation, but by a secret order signed in the middle of the night and classified for years afterward. Its budget is classified, its workforce is classified, its capabilities are classified. What is publicly known about it is almost entirely the result of things it did not want you to know. You have been seconded here from the CIA because your overseas work generated signals intelligence leads that the NSA's Signals Intelligence Directorate wants to develop. SIGINT, not human sources, machines, cables, frequencies, encrypted communications flowing across fiber optic networks at the speed of light. In 2013, a contractor named Edward Snowden walked out of an NSA facility in Hawaii with roughly 1.7 million classified documents and gave them to journalists. What those documents revealed was a surveillance architecture of a scale most people were not prepared to accept as real. The PRISM program, mass collection of internet communications, a data center in Bluffdale, Utah, covering over 1 million square feet, designed to store intercepted communications measured not in gigabytes or terabytes, but in yottabytes, a unit of data so large it had no practical civilian application before this building was constructed. You sit in a room where analysts are reading communications between people in 12 countries simultaneously. None of those people know this room exists. What unsettles you is not the scale of what they collect. What unsettles you is how ordinary it feels inside. The fluorescent lights, the ergonomic chairs, the coffee from a machine in the break room. The people around you are not monsters. They are professionals doing a job they believe is necessary. And the job is to listen to the world. All of it. You stay 14 months. You leave understanding something that takes most people outside this building their entire lives to even partially grasp. Privacy is not a right that is protected. It is a condition that is permitted, and the permission can be withdrawn at any time for reasons you will never be told. Level 3. The Ghostmakers. You have been in Tel Aviv for 6 days before anyone from the Mossad makes contact. This is deliberate. They wanted to watch you first. The Mossad, full name Mossad le-Modin ule-Tafkidim Meyuchadim, the Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations, was founded in 1949, 1 year after the State of Israel declared independence. It operates with a workforce estimated at approximately 7,000 people, making it one of the smallest major intelligence agencies in the world by headcount. It is consistently assessed by intelligence professionals across competing agencies as the most capable. The case officer who meets you in a cafe on Rothschild Boulevard does not introduce herself by her real name. You understand this immediately. In the Mossad, these officers are called Katsas. They are the field intelligence officers who run agent networks, and there are believed to be no more than 30 to 40 of them operating globally at any given time across more hostile territory than any equivalent officer at the CIA or MI6 would be expected to manage. The reason the Mossad operates with a smaller footprint and higher output than its Western counterparts comes down in part to a network the intelligence world calls Sayanim, Jewish volunteers living in countries around the world, doctors, lawyers, bankers, landlords, who provide assistance to Mossad operations without being full agents. A safe apartment, a car rental with no record, a medical consultation that leaves no paperwork. An entire infrastructure of quiet cooperation operating invisibly inside civilian society. You are here because your CIA network and the Mossad's network have identified the same target in the same city, and your respective headquarters have decided that a joint operation serves both interests better than a collision. What you learn working alongside Mossad officers is a different philosophy of intelligence entirely. The CIA thinks in years, the Mossad thinks in decades. A Mossad operation can begin with a recruitment that takes 7 years to produce its first piece of actionable intelligence. They're comfortable with that. They have a clarity of national purpose that creates a patience your own training never quite instilled. They also have a unit called Kidon, a Hebrew word meaning bayonet. You are never briefed on Kidon directly, but in 3 weeks of joint operations, you see enough edges of it to understand what it is. There are things intelligence agencies do that are not intelligence. You are now close enough to one of those things to feel its temperature. You leave Tel Aviv with a different understanding of what the word necessary means, and the understanding that the people who make those decisions sleep perfectly well afterward. Level 4. The Dragon. The Ministry of State Security of the People's Republic of China was established in 1983 from the merger of the Central Investigation Department and counterintelligence functions of the Ministry of Public Security. Its estimated workforce exceeds 100,000 people. It is the largest intelligence apparatus on Earth by personnel, and it operates on a timeline that makes every Western intelligence agency feel short-sighted by comparison. You did not go to China willingly. You went because a joint NSA-CIA assessment identified an MSS officer in a city where your cover identity gave you a plausible reason to be. Your mission was access, understand the targeting, report back. The MSS does not operate the way the CIA operates. The CIA recruits sources. The MSS plants people. A CIA operation runs for months or years. An MSS operation runs for decades. The 1,000 Talents Program, a state-sponsored initiative to recruit overseas Chinese academics and professionals to transfer technology and research back to China, was running for years inside major European and American universities before Western counterintelligence agencies had documented its full scope. By the time they understood what had been taken, it was already gone. What you encounter inside the MSS's operational approach is patience of a kind that has no equivalent in Western intelligence culture. They do not need you to hand them a classified document today. They need you to build a relationship this year that gives them access to someone useful in 5 years, who will be in a position that matters in 15 years. The entire operation is architecture. Long, slow, invisible architecture. You spend 4 months in a city where everything you say is likely being heard, and everything you do is likely being watched. You report what you can. You protect what you must. When you leave, you have a hard drive with documentation of MSS targeting priorities that your agency considers extremely valuable. You also have the clear understanding that for the entire 4 months you were there, you were never fully in control of your own operation. They let you see what they wanted you to see. You reported what they wanted you to report. Whether any of it was real, that analysis is still ongoing in a building in Langley you no longer have access to.
Level 5. The Shadow Court. Interpol's headquarters is a glass building in Lyon, France. It looks like a mid-sized European corporate campus. There are 195 member countries. There is a General Assembly, a Budget Committee, a Secretary General. It has the bureaucratic architecture of a multilateral international institution. What it does not have is agents. This is the fact about Interpol that surprises almost everyone outside the professional intelligence and law enforcement world. Interpol does not employ field officers. It does not arrest people. It does not conduct operations. It is an information sharing and coordination system, a communications infrastructure that connects the national police and intelligence agencies of 195 countries through a secure network called I-24/7, and a system of international notices that the world's law enforcement agencies treat as the closest thing to a global warrant that exists. A red notice is the most serious. It is a request from a member country for the provisional arrest of a named individual. It is not technically a warrant. It has no binding legal force in international law, but in practice, most countries treat it as one. 195 national law enforcement agencies watching for one person. You have been assigned as a liaison officer between your agency and Interpol's General Secretariat because 3 of your long-term intelligence targets have gone mobile across jurisdictions, and the legal mechanisms for pursuing them require coordination that only this building can provide. What you learn inside the Interpol system is the final education your career needed. You have seen how each individual agency operates. Now you see the seams between them, the gaps, the jurisdictions nobody owns, the names on no country's list, the individuals who have learned to live in the space between the 195. You also see something else. Interpol's Article 3 prohibits the organization from undertaking any intervention or activities of a political, military, religious, or racial character. In theory, this means the system cannot be weaponized for political persecution. In practice, you watch 3 separate red notice requests from authoritarian member states come through the system targeting political dissidents rather than criminals. The system processes them. Nobody stops them. You write a report. The report goes into a file. The file goes into a system. The system continues. Level 6. The overlap. There is a moment in every long intelligence career where the map becomes visible. Not the operational map of individual targets and individual missions, the real map. The one that shows how the 5 agencies you have worked inside are not 5 separate systems, but 5 nodes in a single architecture that has no official name and no official director and no official budget, and has been operating continuously since before you were born. The CIA collects humans. The NSA listens to signals. The Mossad operates where collection alone is not sufficient. The MSS builds for the century, and Interpol coordinates the enforcement layer that gives all of it legal cover. Together, they produce something that is not quite intelligence and is not quite governance. It is something that sits above both, a permanent information advantage held by a small number of institutions over every other human structure on Earth. Governments, corporations, criminal organizations, terrorist networks, All of them exist inside a surveillance and intelligence architecture they cannot see and cannot escape, and in most cases do not know is there. You did not build this. You were not asked if you wanted it. You were recruited, trained, posted, seconded, liaised, and deployed, one professional decision at a time, until one day you looked up and realized you were one of the people who makes it run. Level 7. The cost. Nobody tells you what this work costs when they recruit you. They tell you about the mission, the national security, the necessity, the things that would happen if nobody did this work. They do not tell you about the accumulated weight of knowing. Every source you recruited who trusted you with their life, the ones who are still alive, the ones who are not, the intelligence you reported that became a decision you were never consulted about, the operation that succeeded and the one that failed, and the way both of them feel exactly the same inside you years later. You do not have nightmares. You do not have breakdowns. You function at the highest professional level every day. That is what unsettles you most, that the accumulation of what you know and what you have done and what you have been part of fits inside a professional life that looks from the outside like a distinguished career in public service. The clearances you hold are lifelong. The NDAs you signed are permanent. What you know about how the world actually works, not the version in newspapers, not the version in history books, but the operational reality of how decisions get made and by whom and on the basis of what information, that knowledge has nowhere to go. You cannot publish it. You cannot discuss it. You carry it the way you carry everything else in this profession. Carefully, silently, indefinitely. Level 8. The architecture. It is a Tuesday. The light is flat. You are at a desk. Somewhere inside a building in rural Virginia, a 26-year-old has just passed a checkpoint on a road that does not appear on any commercial map. They're nervous and proud, and they have no idea what they're entering. They think they're joining an organization. They're actually entering an architecture. You know the room they're walking into. You know the instructor. You know the document they'll sign. You know the first posting they will be given, and the first source they will recruit, and the first operation that will succeed, and the one that will fail. You know because it was you, and before you it was someone else, and before them, someone else. The architecture does not have a beginning you can point to. It does not have an ending you can imagine. It has people like you moving through it in one direction, passing through each level and then sitting at a desk watching the next generation enter. The CIA collects, the NSA listens, the Mossad acts, the MSS waits, Interpol connects. And somewhere in the space between all five, and the overlap that has no name and no address and no budget line, the real decisions are made by people who were recruited the same way you were, trained the same way, deployed the same way, and who feel the same thing you feel now. Nothing in particular, just the quiet understanding that this is how the world works, that someone has to make it work this way, that the someone, after all this time, after all these levels, after all these agencies and clearances and operations and silences, is still you. There are 5 organizations on this planet that know things your government will never tell you. You have worked for all of them. And the most classified thing any of them ever gave you is the one thing you will take to your grave. You understand now why it has to stay there.